Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another of your spooky sessions with me, your host, Heather Gold. Now, tonight it is the last episode of Series 1 of Restoration. There are only 5 episodes in this series, and we've reached the final one tonight. Now, because this one is an exceptionally long episode, I won't be reading a shorter paranormal story beforehand, because to be honest with you, it would take us up to probably nearly an hour, and I know that's more than some people can, they don't want a video that long. So I'm trying to do the best by everyone. I will make it up to you for next week. But in this particular situation, I'm just going to read the episode to you. So I hope that everyone's doing well. I invite you to sit back and relax while I read to you the final story, final episode of this series of Restoration, episode 5. Now, where did we leave off from last week? Fred's family have died in a fire started by Belial. Belial took off all the doorknobs, nailed down the windows, and he's made it look as if Fred has murdered his family. Well, that meant that none of his family would really bother speaking to him because they thought he was guilty. But the biggest shock was, as he's busy burying his family, he's arrested at the graveside and charged with murder and insurance fraud. And of course, Belial is doing as usual, inhabiting the body of a detective and glowering the whole time, enjoying the scene. So we're going to pick up from where we left off and find out what happens to Fred in this final episode. And I really do hope that you enjoy this one. I get pulled out of the squad car in my Sunday best and lead into the police station. Fingerprinted? Great. Mugshot? Awesome. Pat down? Man, this day is going great. I started off by burying my family, only to get arrested for their murders in the evening. The pat down is a bit odd. The officer who's doing it stops at my coat pocket, doesn't pull anything out, and just waves me by after removing my wallet. I'm finally plopped into an interview room. There's a little 2-way mirror about 2 foot square, a table, and 3 chairs, counting mine. I notice they are bolted down, which makes sense, as I'm sure they don't want folks going full Jerry Springer when being interrogated. I try to contemplate how I would wound up here, thinking about where everything has been going and how. I think of a way I can maybe convince the detective who arrested me that his partner is who he seems. Could that work? I think of scenarios where, if he was convinced, what would happen? I know Belial can move objects. I saw that firsthand. Something tells me if I hadn't been handling highly sacred objects, he'd be able to pull me too. If I blew his cover, would he just kill us and everyone in this place? Or worse, would he kill his partner, aka Darth Vader force choke, and spin another frame job on me? Should I even count Belial as a he? Or should I just be using it? Despite all this, I'm feeling oddly calm when I see both of them walk into the room. The black detective sits down and clicks on a recording device, which is embedded in the wall. So, Mr. McKeown, I'm Detective Aaron Brown. We just want to ask a few quick questions and then we can all go about our day. I look to Belial, who's letting his partner do the talking for him. I'll be happy to answer them, but I'll say this much. I didn't murder my family. Detective Brown just nods and smiles. Of course. He looks down to a file folder, pulling out a piece of paper. So, the day of the events concerning your family's tragic demise. Where were you? Belial is smiling wickedly. I was visiting a work site and then my office. I was looking for some equipment I'd left behind. I'll just say it plainly. I'm not entirely lying after all. This work site. How far away from your house was it? Detective Brown continues. About an hour, I say simply. And why, in the middle of the night, did you feel the need to check for this equipment? Why couldn't it wait till morning? I didn't have a decent answer for this, and I tried to think of something that wouldn't immediately put both Belial and Detective Brown at immediate odds with me. I wanted to try and survive this interview without being in jail, which seemed unlikely at this point. Well, your demon-possessed partner over there sent me off to get an unholy object, or else he was going to slaughter my entire family. While truthful, probably would make him think I'm a fucking round with him. Despite that being the truth, I decided to stick to my lie. I was afraid it might get stolen. It was pretty expensive. Well, that makes sense. What piece of equipment was it, if you don't mind me asking? Of all the cops in the world, I get the one competent bastard that can smell bullshit from a mile away, don't I? Remember, folks, get your lies straight before you're in the hot seat. It was a sandblaster, fairly large one. At least a couple of grand, right, for that? Wouldn't look too good in the old expense report if that went missing, the very accurate detective asks. I nod, and I've a good idea where he's going with this line of questioning, but I'm hoping we don't get there. This job was on Monday and Tuesday about 2 weeks ago, right? I nod. That's very interesting. Belial now interjects. Why is that interesting, Aaron? Detective Brown looks to me now. Feel free to explain why I found that interesting, Mr. McKeown. Because, I say, my schedule at the office don't say I had a job that day. I admit, hoping some honesty can be appreciated. The detective bangs on the desk, and his 3 times. We have a winner. He leans over to me, getting uncomfortably close to over the table. Your usual crew doesn't say you had a job. I say what I'm about to say, knowing I'm going to start treading some deep water. There was a job, but the client preferred to be non-public. Non-public. Detective Brown's playful smile fades quickly. You know, every time I get a prick like you, one of these, I can't be culpable if I don't know what happened, assholes. You always have another word for it. Confidential, on the down low, under the table, discreet, exclusive, but non-public? Well, that's a nice way of putting My client is probably dealing with some criminal shit I don't want to know about. The detective leans back in his chair. What do you say, Mr. Macchione? Am I in the ballpark? I'm quiet now, waiting. I glance to Belial and catch a shit-eating grin. I'm starting to sweat and there's nothing I can do to stop myself. We had some forensic accounting done in your business, Mr. Macchione. Pretty preliminary stuff, you know. He leans over towards Belial. It should have gone under about a year ago, or at the very least you should have fired someone. Belial now interjects. Now, dealing a few jobs under the table here and there isn't a big deal, but $100,000? That's a shitload of extra stuffed into your accounts, Detective Brown says slyly. I look to Belial. That's not how much I have in my business, at least not in the bank. Timothy's case was the biggest score I'd had in months, and this year the under-the-table stuff didn't come close to making up the difference. Not between all the expenses, equipment, and so on I had to pay. Did Belial do something? I literally have no idea what you're talking about. So you don't know where a payment of over 30 grand came from in the past month? Say the cash we found in an envelope with a thank you letter that wasn't on your books but was definitely a payment? Such a nice letter too. Must have done him a hell of a favour. Admittedly, he had me there. With everything going the way it was, I never had time to properly handle the cash I got from Timothy's job. Normally, I'd make sure to pay out a bonus or two, buy some equipment, pay off some bills, and always do it with under-the-table cash. Suddenly had an epiphany, because maybe Belial didn't do anything but crunching the numbers of what I had just done that year. I did have 2 clean-ups, but they weren't as high profile, but they did overpay. I'm sweating more as I think about whether or not I am a good person after all. Here I am thinking about how my money laundering didn't go over so well, and I think the average kid dealing weed on the street could do a better job than me. That accounts for this year alone, and our guys are sifting through your books as we speak. And we keep on finding gaps in payments and bills paid that should never be paid. Detective Brown cracks his knuckles. And somehow I don't think your non-public clients would appreciate us digging through their dirty laundry. Might get ugly for you, especially if you're on the outside. That's the stick. Now this guy's going to give me a carrot. Of course, we could just skip all that. If you can tell me, honestly, what happened to your wife and kids? Why the doorknobs were found removed? And why the windows were nailed shut? I'm quiet while I think of a way out. Then I hear Belial's human voice. Aaron, why don't you step out, have a coffee? I'll turn that thing off and I'll have a word or two with him. Detective Brown looks to Belial. Ben, he clicks off the recorder. I can't have another charge against you for roughening someone up during an interrogation. Belial just nods. It's okay, Aaron. Just step out for a second. It'll be fine. Detective Brown stands up and leaves the room. I'm pretty sure that half of all that was normal good cop, bad cop setup. But with Belial alone with me in the room, I'm pretty sure I got the good cop, satanic cop game played on me. Belial wheezes in his normal voice. That was dull and boring, wasn't it? He leans back in his chair. Do they still do the chair here? Or just lethal injection? I narrow my eyes on him. Lethal injection is fun. A lot can go wrong. Belial's eyes are on me as he leans back, grinning. You can feel your heart and your lungs start to shut down sometimes. I adjust myself nervously in my seat and suddenly feel something in my jacket pocket. My hand discreetly checks it while Belial leans back in his seat, looking to the ceiling lights. It's round, cold, and I feel a cap. I try to hide my excitement. It's the same type of bottle that Sandy and the kids drank. I wondered what it would do if I doused him in it. I also wonder how it even got into my pocket, but I'm much more concerned with what to do now that it's there. You know, beheadings was technically more painless. He looks me in the eyes now. I miss beheadings. He moves his now healed left hand up to his temple, resting his head on his hand. I notice he's only sporting 3 of his black rings, and I remember how one crumbled away from touching my wife. Hangings, too. Nothing beats when the rope doesn't snap the neck, and you're just left being strangled by the rope, all while you piss and shit yourself in front of a crowd. Now or never, I think, as I thumb the cap off the bottle of my pocket. Shut up. Belial's gaze slips slightly. What if I don't, Red Fred? I remember what my mother used to say whenever she felt she was dealing with things possessed in the house. Normally it was dryer on the fritz or a bird that somehow managed to get into the house, but the phrase rang pretty clearly in my head for some reason the second the bottle was opened in my pocket. I hoped I wasn't going to look like a complete moron if this didn't work. I splashed the contents of the bottle on his hand first, then his face. I made sure to get every one of those rings covered in the water too. And while I did this, I shouted, "In the name of Jesus Christ, get thee behind me!" Steam erupted from his rings, and he gasped suddenly in an intense pain. He chokes as he inhales the steam rising from his hand. He stands up quickly and pressed himself against the wall, and he got back to flail as if he couldn't breathe. I kept splashing him and got a bit of myself in the process. I was a bit frantic at this point. I remember every time I saw an exorcism flick and start chanting, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, leave this man," interjected with a few of, "The power of Christ compels you." If not for the apparently seizing man across from me, I likely looked ridiculous. Belial is wheezing, hacking, coughing. His rings have broken and crumbled to the ground. I feel like I'm missing something serious in all of this, because he's still in front of me, his yellow eyes swirling and glaring at me. I can almost hear his voice in my head as if it's saying, "When this wears off, I'm going to murder you." I'm pretty sure I'm just pissing him off right now, but he's definitely weakened. I look to the bottle, and I notice something's written on it. Is it a parable? I splash Belial one more time and read the bottle. Then I give my own shit-eating grin to Belial and read the writing out loud. "Most glorious Prince of Presence, Saint Enoch, the knower of secrets, heavenly scribe, the governor of the world, expel from this cursed flesh the fallen before me." And after the words leave my lips, I feel dizzy. I'm not sure if that's because I might just have successfully cast out an all-powerful demon prince, or because I'm being tackled by Detective Brown. Either way, when I hit the floor, I'm completely winded and not sure if I can keep chanting. "What the fuck did you just do to my partner?" Detective Brown shouts. From his point of view, things have gone too far south far too quick. Maybe he just did get a coffee and came back in to see his partner, being dosed in what looked like acid from the outside. Both of us are distracted, however, as the screams coming from Belial change pitch. Suddenly they go higher, shrieking, and I watch his mouth open unnaturally wide as his head points upwards, his back arching unnaturally, arms stiffening to his sides as he begins to shake. The form of a man crawls out of its open mouth, naked from the waist up. His eyes are yellow and black swirls of smoke, his form translucent, his brow is furrowed as long black hair seems to float over him as if he's under water. His face, his body, his arms, hands, every part of him looks physically perfect, as if some male fitness model just appeared out of this guy's mouth. His form grows, it fills the room, moving over the ceiling as I notice a pair of black wings appear to be on either side of him, and they look like black flames. The flames rising from each wing seem to make the room hotter, and ash falls from the bottom of each. The wings are so large they fill the entire room and block off the exit. I'm suddenly hit with a strong scent of sulphur, and the shrieking from the physical body of Benjamin grows louder. Belial's left hand reaches out towards me, his teeth gritted. "Fred." His voice hisses louder than I'd heard it before. No longer a wheeze, a vile breath reaching me, and the detective makes me retch. "Not by you, you pathetic, sinful, mortal," he yells, his voice bellowing and shaking the room. "I will not be cast out by the likes of you." The room shakes even more, and his hand almost touches me. His finger appears to turn to smoke, and his hands grab his chest, his wings wrapped around himself. Above him, there's a more terrifying sight. A spear pierces through him from above. Again translucent, a massive hand holds the spear. The hand is black, clawed, and seems to be scaled, like a lizard. A giant lizard head pushes down from the ceiling, white glowing eyes drowning out the light of the fluorescent bulbs in the room, and more contrasting black scales along its muzzle. I can make out a pair of horns near the back of its head, but they disappear into the ceiling. I hear an unearthly roar as the spear is pulled back, and then thrust through Belial again, hitting him in the chest, right into where I assume a heart would be if the bastard had one. Belial screams once more. His voice shakes me to my core. "No! No! Do not send me back!" At his last words, suddenly nothing but a black ball hovers over the mouth of Belial's previous host. I see the black lizard's face open its maw, and a white light douses the little ball over Belial's former body. Suddenly, all the air seems to be sucked out of the room, and I feel a massive pressure smash into me and knock me and the detective into the far wall as the black ball seemed to explode in bright white light. I hear nothing but ringing in my ears right after I hear glass shattering and the sounds of alarms blaring. Someone grabs me, hauling me out of the room, and as I'm being shuffled out, dust and chaos all around me, I see Belial's body lying motionless on the floor, his partner shouting something or other to the other officers. The officer who has me keeps pulling me and roughly handling me. I feel weak, and I shield my eyes as I'm suddenly outside, then thrown into the back of a car. My ears barely stop ringing, and I think I have myself composed enough until the car starts up, speeding off, sirens blaring. I hear a Latin accent again from the front seat. "That was amazing, Fred. Good job." I look up and see Chavez, wearing a police cap and uniform, giving me a thumbs up. Right before I pass out, I realised that the cop who gave me the pat down must have been Chavez. He put the water into my pocket. I chuckle as I lose consciousness. I'm woken up by a knocking on the rear window. I groggily look up to see Chavez's smiling face on the other side, now without the policeman's cap on. "Fred, wake up, man, let's go." The door opens and I'm dragged out. Chavez gets me to my feet, but I feel weak and can barely walk. "You did great, Fred, you did. Hang on a little bit longer." I can't go on and fall to my knees. Everything is still spinning. "St. Timothy!" Chavez shouts. "Quickly!" Before I know what's going on, I see Timothy rushing towards me. "You have to heal his spirit," Chavez says. "The exorcism took a toll on him." "Jorge, I don't know how," I hear Timothy admit. Chavez grabs Timothy's hand and places it on my forehead. "Ask your grandmother." Timothy then takes a breath, and suddenly I feel better. I blink my eyes clear and I start to get up off my knees. By the time I'm standing, I look to Timothy in front of me, still wearing his trench coat, looking at his hand curiously. Chavez is thrilled. "I told you, Belial's interference wasn't enough to weaken the gift passed on." Timothy nods, seemingly in shock, and then looks to me. "You did well, Fred." I lean up against the car and look Timothy in the eyes. "So you're not an angel?" Timothy shakes his head, but Chavez protests. "He is," Chavez smiles to me, "but he's young still. He doesn't know his own strength, Fred." I look to Chavez oddly. "How do you know?" "Because I read, Fred. I read the Bible." He points to Timothy. "He's the grandson of St. Dinah, daughter of Enoch." Timothy just nods. "We can talk later, Chavez. I think Fred needs to know where he is." Chavez smiles and points to a 2-story house. "That's your new home." I look around and there seem to be a few homes sprinkled here and there, but it looks like in the middle, Midwestern bumfuck nowhere. Timothy and Chavez make their way down the walkway towards the 2-story home, and I follow. When Timothy gets to the door, he knocks 3 times. "Fred's here," Timothy says as he knocks. The door opens, and I see Sandy's smiling face. I run past Chavez and Timothy, and I hug and kiss her for what feels like too short a time, right up until I get a firm punch in the shoulder. Timothy and Chavez both wince. "Never take a job like this again," she says. "We were scared half to death." She takes a deep breath. "And also we're going to start going to church, like a lot." "I thought you were dead. You and the boys," I said softly. Suddenly Sandy is glaring at Timothy. "Oh, you did you?" She charges at Timothy and proceeds to hammer his shoulder a few times, puncturing each hit with a word. "Timothy, how dare you do that to him?" Timothy gasps in pain. "I'm sorry, Sandy." She turns around sharply and walks back inside. The boys are playing video games right now and they won't shut up about how the internet sucks. Now get in here while I try and figure out dinner. I hear a litany of other complaints from her, from the stove to the refrigerator and the like, which is typical of her. I walk inside, relieved to find my wife safe and still slightly crazy, and greet my 2 boys. For the first time in weeks, I feel happy and free. After dinner, when my boys challenge Chavez to a round of some first-person shooter. I see Timothy in the backyard, looking out over more than an acre of property, apparently mine. The sun's setting in the distance. I walk towards him, looking him over. So how old are you? 25, Timothy says. Jesus, I have 15 years on you, I say plainly. Timothy nods. I say, how exactly are you an angel? Timothy says, and shakes his head. I'm hardly an angel, certainly not a saint like Jorge keeps calling me. So what are you then? At best, half angel, half... He looks far away into the sky. Monster. Care to elaborate? I'm done being in the dark. So we're breaking the no questions asked policy. He smiles as he turns to me. I nod. Yes, because I won't be doing that anymore. I shudder. I was worried enough about the cops finding out what I did, but I take a deep breath. I guess I didn't realise what else there was just as interested. Timothy just chuckles. To answer your question, I'm the grandson of Dinah, or Enoch, who was the daughter to Enoch, of course, known as the Metatron, the voice of God. Enoch, that's the guy I shouted about in front of Belial. Timothy nods. Most exorcisms don't go that well. Part 1 is getting the name of the spirit infesting the body. Part 2 is ensuring you have the correct angel to get the job done. Most possessions you can invoke Michael the Archangel and they'll go screaming because Michael's the commander of God's army. Half the time Michael will actually delegate the task to a lesser angel, but that depends on the individual's faith and resolve. That can drive out most lesser demons. For Belial, we needed bigger guns, but a stronger resolve. That's why we needed you, seeking justice and retribution. Otherwise, you may have died. Timothy frowned to me. It's why I had to make you believe Belial had killed your family. It was hard, as I can't lie. I try not to let that sink in. So, you can't lie at all? As a descendant of Enoch, it's kind of in my blood. I mean, someone who speaks for God has to lack the ability to lie. Of course. I try to think of a time when Timothy lied to me. But while he withheld information, he never did lie. My family's souls were safe, that was true. And he didn't even lie about the blood or how long it was there. It also explains why he was shit at haggling. That means you talk to God. The Metatron speaks for God, right? Timothy sighs and shakes his head. My mother was stolen from Dinah when she was a child, stolen by none other than Belial. He corrupted her, filled her with hatred and despair. She had me with let's just say a mass murderer, a fallen prophet. One of the people who destroyed the temple we had to restore, actually. So that's the monster half, I ask. Yes. Timothy places his hands in his pockets. My mother left me alone with my father, so I never learned what she knew. I've never even met her. Takes a deep breath. One day, I ran away from him and found the entrance to the Guardian Temple. The only thing that comes naturally is my ability to do this, he said with an outstretched hand, as a pair of doors appeared in the yard out of nowhere. I look inside. Now well lit is the room I was so used to working in, but had no desire to visit again. I used its gates to come into this world, joined the military, rose up the ranks and gained influence. because I'm going to fight my father. He looks to me. I'm going to stop him and his sister from destroying another world. To do that, I needed a base. I did my best alone, but I needed help to fix the temple up. So you called me? Timothy nods again. I didn't lie about how I heard of you. Everything else is settled. How did you save my family? I thought they were dead. I saw bodies. Timothy laughs. I got your message. When I did, I realised the mistake I'd made, that I didn't know where you were or that you had a family. But you should thank Chavez. He knew what your address was. And from there, I was able to will the gates to open. I just opened them in the basement and found your family there. Sandy's quite the smart woman, by the way. She had soaked towels and sheets and shoved them under the doors, windows, and was doing her best to hide under a soaked blanket. She was shocked to see a pair of doors appear, literally out of nowhere, but she ran in regardless, taking the kids. He sighed. And from there I was able to substitute some corpses, and Chavez and I figured out a way for you to defeat Belial. I raised an eyebrow. Why couldn't you defeat him? Timothy's smile weakened as he looked at my new house. I was afraid. He kicks at the dirt, slightly frustrated. Belial manipulated my mother, stole her away from my grandmother, and nearly gotten his hands on something that could have handed him the world, all because of my miscalculations. He's older and more powerful than anything I'm likely to ever face or be. So it's like you thought in the car. Your guardian angel is a kind of and he grins at me, a pussy. Like I thought, I said, bewildered. Mind reading is a simple trick of your angel, apparently. Why me? Honestly, Timothy said, some amusement in his voice. Belial at his core is a follower of Lucifer. Like his master, he's most vulnerable when he thinks he's won the day. So, me thinking he killed my family and him tormenting me was him, what, boasting? Timothy nods. Pride comes before a fall, always. I shake my head. So, I get why I helped, but you couldn't call in reinforcements for a thing like Belial? Timothy's smile falls. Fred, I am the reinforcements. I felt my stomach fall a bit. What do you mean? Timothy looks to the temple entrance in front of us. Angels existed on this plane because God needs them to perform his miracles. God, while omnipresent, is also omniabsent. The angels serve his desires, and he directs them from time to time. He looks to me. Think of it as if every time God blinks, a few 100 years pass. He can only invoke his will directly from time to time, when directly called upon by someone of extremely strong faith. I look to the temple doors again. So that temple, the guardian temple where God's angels and master coordinate his will, chose prophets, create miracles, led by the Metatron. I recall the blood I had to clean up. So wait, you mean they're gone? Murdered by what is in essence my aunt and father. I'm all that's left, and I'm trying to rebuild. So for now, we need to lean on the resolve and faith of mortals like you. He smiled at me. But now I don't feel so helpless. I feel like there's a chance, however small. Timothy looks at the open gates with a faraway gaze. We'll lose them, however. I'm not sure how long it's going to be to take me to recover and get the upper hand. How long do you need? I ask, like I could do anything. 15, maybe 20 years. Which reminds me, I need to get back to work. Timothy gives that a sudden whistle. Chavez and I should go. We're causing you enough trouble. Chavez? Still? I laugh. What do you need him for? Timothy looks to my house again with a look of serenity as I see Chavez running out towards us with a plate with a slice of cake on it to show me what I can hopefully become. St. Timothy, I'm coming. Also, Mrs. Macchio made you a cake, Chavez shouts. Timothy narrows his eyes. I swear, Chavez, if it's angel food cake. Chavez just smiles broadly at the pun. I groan as Chavez hands over the cake to Timothy, who is also rolling his eyes, and they walk towards the doors. Timothy stops before closing the doors. If you need me again, you have my number. The doors close and vanish into thin air. I hope I never see you again, I say out loud as I head into my new house. Now we're at the epilogue. 10 years later, and I work in restoration. On the weekends, my new crew and I check out churches in need of repair and free of charge work on restoring their stonework. We do it as charity. Nothing but the raw materials are paid for. Usually the priest takes up a collection via the old school plates, or we get it done by a crowdfunding website. My new guy, Devon, is on the second floor of this church overlooking the centre aisle, checking out a stone pillar in bad shape. Fred, this thing can't be secured. I'm going to have to get some temporary supports for the roof. Literally rebuild it from the ground up. Knock out the old, bring in the new one, whole 9 yards. The Padre's not going to be happy, Devon shouts down. He can pray for it to be fixed, but unless God sends mason angels, it ain't happening. Ask and ye shall receive. The priest of the church suddenly overheard us, and he walked towards me. Dare I ask? I'm sure it's expensive. I nod. I'll get a quote together for you and see what we can do, Father. He nods. And I'll call my insurance company after I pray to God to help me through the customer service robots. Priests all have terrible jokes, by the way. Something you learn when having worked in multiple churches. My tinnitus kicks in, which I've had for the past 10 years. I wish it was the normal sort where you hear a high-pitched ringing. It's not. It's a high-pitched scream. The sort I heard when Belial was cast out. I pull out some eardrops which I keep in the same bottle that Chavez gave me. The screaming stops pretty quickly. The priest looks at the bottle for a moment. Saint Enoch? Obscure? I laugh. It was a gift from a friend of mine, Timothy. The priest nods. Ah, that makes sense. He's named Timothy. I look to the priest oddly. Why does it make sense? The priest smiles at me. Well, my boy, Timothy means follower of God. I smile and nod. Yeah, that's him. One of the nuns runs up to us. Father, something is happening on the news in Jerusalem. The priest turns and follows her. I follow out of my newfound curiosity. We all head into a back room with a television in it. 2 other nuns are inside, glued to the TV. It looks like an overhead shot of destroyed streets in the headline. It reads, Terror in the Holy Land. I see a little 124 logo in the corner. Never haven't heard of the channel before, personally. I'm sure it's just hyperbole, sisters. The priest starts. The camera pans down to a group of 5 people. 3 of the group look like they are wearing a uniform of sorts. 2 are women, both blonde. The man is bald. They are wearing white long sleeves with black vests and matching black pants. Another man is seen next to them, and it's hard to make out what he's wearing. It's red and brown and black, and I swear he could be wearing a cape or something. Short white hair on his head. The largest figure of the five looks like a massive man with long white hair braided down the left side, while the right side of the head seems to be shaved completely. The larger man wears what looks like white full plate armour and a white cape with a blue accent inside of it. Suddenly the bald guy cracks his fingers and fire spews forth from his hands like he has a flamethrower under each palm. One of the sisters watching screams, and the priest tries to comfort her. The anchorman on the TV feed chimes in. It looks like there's some kind of advanced weapons systems, and it seems attack helicopters are being called in. Oh my God! The camera shakily changes as the white figure is suddenly in the air, and a pair of white wings have unfolded from behind. In an instant, suddenly, something springs from the angel's back, lands in its hand, and smashes into the helicopter, destroying it in an explosion of fire before the figure flaps their wings again, blasting the debris away and diving at the next helicopter, jamming the object that was pulled out in the helicopter closer to the camera. I lunge for the remote and hit the pause on the TV. Frozen on the screen, it's clearer to see it's not a man, but an absolute monster of a woman. In her hands is a massive sword, huge and bulky, and yet she seems to wield it without much effort. It looks like there is a blue Omega symbol on one of the shoulders of her white armour. I recall what happened to the helicopter as she swung at it, destroyed in a single blow. The voice of the woman who Timothy was talking to in the temple, behind the barricade, and I remember what she said over the sound of machinery. It was her, wasn't it? The daughter of Lucifer. One of the nuns asks, Is that an angel? My face goes pale as I realise who this is, what she can do, and what she has done. She's here now, the people Timothy is trying to stop. I try to fathom if Timothy has had enough time to get ready, if we have any hope at all. The priest suddenly starts to speak behind us all. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts. And I looked, and behold, he points at the screen ominously, his hand shaken. A pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Well, my friends, that was the end of restoration. I don't know, what did you think of that? It's funny because the amount of times I've read it, this is the first time I've read it out loud. I'm trying to give a voice to each character, and it's hard. But let me know what you thought about this first series. Please let me know. Now, next week, because, as you know, Zithero is writing wonderful stories. We've already read I'm a Priest at the Vatican, I made a deal with an angel. Now, the next series we read is called My Kid is Sick. I Should Not Have Opened the Door. Now, this is Detective Jason Miller. Do you remember him? And who his mother is or was? Sarah Baker. So, the next 7 weeks, we're going to be reading about Detective Jason Miller and what he has to do with this story. So, we'll start that next week, shall we? And see how we get on with that. All these stories I'm reading on a Friday in the spooky sessions are all by Zithero. He is absolutely top of his game. He writes fantastic stories. And unless any one of you comes and says to me, you know, we don't want to hear them anymore, find something else or do something else, I'm just going to keep on reading them. Don't forget, you guys tell me what it is that you want, and I'll just do my best to give you what you ask for. So, anyway, I do hope you liked tonight's last episode. I was left feeling with a sense of trepidation, because Lord knows what's coming next. Well, I hope that all of you have a wonderful weekend, no matter where you are in the world and no matter what it is that you do. I just hope it's good for you and that you're happy while you're doing it. I want to thank you very much for watching. I want to thank you very much for listening to me while I read this story. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if you want to make me smile, please like the video. You know, because it does make me smile when I get likes on my videos. It sort of gives me validation that I'm doing the right thing. I mean, if you didn't like it, then don't leave anything. But if you did, then I would love it if you liked it. Because it really does me the power of good. Makes my soul smile as well. I know that sounds a bit daft, but that's what it does. I'm going to say I love you all. And like I said, I hope you have the best weekend ever. And now I'm going to say good night. And as I have my candle, I'm going to blow that out and wish you a very good night. Good night.